Mr. President, with tax filing season underway, the American people are beginning to feel the impact of the working families' tax cuts. They're seeing smaller tax bills, bigger refunds, and more money in their pockets. And perhaps one of the biggest boosts from this law is for the hardworking Americans who will now be able to deduct tips and overtime pay from their taxes. That's right. Thanks to the working families' tax cuts, millions of Americans who earn tips and work overtime will see tax relief on that income and save hundreds of dollars on their taxes. Mr. President, 6 million Americans claimed tips on their taxes last year. And it's fair to say that for many of these hardworking people, no tax on tips is a game changer. Tyler, who's a waiter in Nevada, said, and I quote, "It will be nice to be able, instead of saving for taxes, to be saving for our future," end quote. And he's not alone. Cora, who works at a restaurant in Iowa, echoed that. She said, and I quote, "In the service industry, too, you're always constantly worried about that end of the year number is going to be. Now, with this, we have some relief with that, too," end quote. Mr. President, we're not talking about an inconsequential sum of money. A waitress in California said she owed $900 in taxes last year. And Americans who earn tips already have plans for where to put their tax savings. Some are planning to put it into their education and savings, toward groceries and rent, or as one mother in Michigan said, toward raising her 4 kids. Because of the working families' tax cuts, when someone puts their tips in their pocket at the end of their shift, their money stays in their pocket. Mr. President, Republicans' landmark tax relief bill also created a new deduction for overtime pay. Overtime is a significant part of a lot of Americans' incomes. Police officers, firefighters, paramedics, nurses, manufacturing workers, and tradespeople. But up until now, the impact of those extra hours and extra wages was muted by taxes. No longer. Now these hardworking Americans will be able to keep more of the money they earn when they spend extra hours away from their loved ones, often doing very challenging jobs. This is especially true for nurses and other healthcare workers for whom overtime is a routine part of their week. One nurse in California said nurses are now asking for overtime thanks to the no tax on overtime provision. Mr. President, whether it's more money for a vacation, for education, or for just paying for day-to-day expenses, the working family tax cuts is a game changer for a lot of Americans. And no tax on tips and overtime is on top of permanently lower tax rates, a higher standard deduction, a $2,000 tax credit, and so much more. And it all adds up to hardworking Americans keeping more of their hard-earned money to spend, invest, and save how they see fit. Mr. President, despite all that the working families tax cuts does for middle-income Americans, Democrats are once again peddling the lie that this bill is about tax breaks for billionaires. That obviously is very far from the truth. I've talked about some of the people who are benefiting from this bill today. Not a single one of them is a billionaire. They're not millionaires either. In fact, a lot of the people who are benefiting from the working families tax cuts live paycheck to paycheck. They work every day to have enough money to pay the bills, support their families, and maybe put something away for the future. That's, Mr. President, who Republicans had in mind when we wrote this bill. And that's who's benefiting. Democrats can say what they want, but the American people are seeing the benefits from this bill with their own eyes.